Hello ladies and gentle peeps, Game Chanel here, and today I'm going to present to you my dual blades build. As you might or might not be able to hear, my voice sounds a little bit different. Actually, I don't know because I haven't edited the video at the time of the recording. But I got my new headset, I'm super excited, the quality is great. I chose the HyperX Alpha Pro headset and I'm super pleased so far. So I hope from now on the volume won't be an issue anymore. So before I go into the details of the build, I just quickly want to say that fashion-wise, we're looking okay. We're not the worst looking, person in the game. However, if you're struggling with some of the decorations that I have, the good news is none of these decorations that I have are really mandatory. You can switch out some pieces of gear, if you're missing some of the decorations that I have. But the bad news is you'll look pretty ugly, and I'll explain to you and show you why that is. But overall, it's a super easy set to farm, it's a super easy set to get, and it's pretty powerful in my opinion. So if you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a thumbs up. Also consider subscribing if you want to join the community. And without further ado, let's get into it. So for the weapon, we're using the Fire and Ice dual blades, and they just are some of the best dual blades in the game in my opinion. They have 10% affinity, they come with Ice and Blast element, they have a level 2 decoration slot and an Augmentation slot, and if you give this some handicraft, you also get white Sharpness, which is amazing. Now the set that we have focuses a lot on blast damage, so if you really don't want to use these, which I really recommend using those, but if you don't want to go for you can go for any others that have blast. However, keep in mind that the other two that have blast element, they come with negative affinity, which makes them really bad in this set, and I'll show you why. But you could opt out for other ones if you really don't like the Fire and Ice ones, but just trust me, go with these and you'll be much more happy. So for the augmentation for this weapon, I highly recommend going for the affinity increase because we will benefit a lot from critical hits, and I'll show you in a second why. The other option probably would be to go for health regen, since we hit quite quickly. We can regenerate a decent amount of health. If you're really struggling, that would be one option. However, I highly recommend going for the affinity increase to raise your affinity from 10% to 20%. So let's have a quick look at the equipment that we're using. Now we have the Strategist headpiece, and that gets us critical eye level 2, and I have slotted in the blast jewel, which increases our blast attack by 1 level. We have the Kushala Sister Beta, which gives us handicraft level 2, and I slotted in a Destroyer jewel for 1 level of part breaker. Then we have the Kaiser Vambraces Alpha. That gives us 2 levels of weakness exploit, and I slotted in the Expert jewel for another level of critical eye. We have the Kaiser Coil Beta for 2 levels of blast attack and 1 decoration, the Tenderizer jewel, to basically bring weakness exploit to level 3. And then we have the Kaiser Greaves Beta. They give us latent power, and I slotted in another critical eye decoration. And in the weapon I have the Destroyer jewel 2 for basically a 2nd level of part breaker. Now, the decorations are pretty much optional, except the blast jewel. I would recommend that one just because we have a weapon that uses the blast element, and also the Tenderizer jewel, obviously, to get to level 3 of weakness exploit. That's kind of like important. And then I would say the Expert jewels are also pretty good because we want to get as close as possible to 100% affinity. And the reason why we want to do that is because, let me show you the skills. We have the Teostra technique, because we are running 3 pieces of the Teostra set: the hands, the coil, and the pants. And every time we basically land a critical hit, our weapon doesn't lose sharpness. Now, as you see, our weapon has white sharpness, and as long as we hit critically, we actually don't lose any sharpness. And as you know, the dual blades lose sharpness by, quite a bit. So that is very important to keep in mind. So we want to get our affinity as high as possible. Now currently, as it stands, you can see on the right hand side, I have 25% affinity. We have weakness exploit level 3, and now every time we hit a weak spot, that increases our affinity by 50%, so in total 75%. Now I haven't augmented the weapon yet, but once we do that, we actually go to 85% affinity, so that's already pretty high, and you shouldn't have any issues with your sharpness once you get to that level. If you further want to increase your affinity by an additional 10%, what you could do is, let me go back to the decorations real quick. You could basically replace the Destroyer Jewels, the 2 that I have in here. You can replace these with 2 more Expert Jewels if you have them. And basically, instead of Expert level 4, you would be at level 6. So from 15 to 25%, basically a 10% increase. So instead of 85, you could have 95% affinity. Is it worth it? I don't know. I'd rather go for the Destroyer Jewels to do 20% more part damage to cut off tails and stuff much faster. That is a personal choice because I'm also using, as you can see, I'm also using the Affinity Booster. So that also gives me an additional 50% affinity for as long as the booster is active. And I basically touch it every 20 or 25 seconds. So I'm not really struggling with critical hits at all. And so there's that, but it's completely up to you. You can obviously make adjustments as you wish, and please. Very important to know, I also have the Handicraft Charm 2 at the moment. You can get this to level 3, however there's only 2 ways according to Reddit or from what I read so far. So in order to get this to level 3, you need a final ingredient that I don't have unlocked yet, and as you can see here, it's like this blue script. So in order to get this blue script, there's 2 ways. One is to turn Hunter rank level 100 and then do the mission that you get, and basically as a reward you'll get this blue script. Or number 2 is you can do all optional quests, and apparently as a reward you'll get this blue script as well. So if you're not Hunter rank level 100 but you're close to finishing all the optional quests, you can go ahead and do that as well. And basically that increases your handicraft from level 4 to level 5. So speaking about the skills, let's look at them all together. Again, we have the Teostra technique. That's pretty much what this whole set is built on. We have Critical Eye level 4. Handicraft level 4, again that will be level 5 eventually. We have Blast Attack level 3 to increase our blast buildup by 20% and also additional blast element bonus damage. So as you can see on the right hand side, we are at 300 with this particular build. We have Weakness Exploit level 3, Part Breaker level 2 from the decorations, and then we have Latent Power. Well, one thing to note about Latent Power is it temporarily increases affinity and reduces stamina depletion when certain conditions are met. So it doesn't say what certain conditions are, but from what I have read, and if I remember correctly, I mean, don't quote me, but I think after about 5 minutes of fighting, this skill activates for a certain amount of time. And also if you lose like 150 health or 180 health combined, something in that range. So as soon as that happens, you'll activate the skill, and basically that increases your affinity by an additional 20%. So now you should be at over 100% as long as you hit critical or weak spots. And it also reduces your stamina depletion, which is good for us since we are using quite a bit of stamina, especially when we're in demon mode. So it reduces a little bit of the stamina depletion. What you could do if you wanted to, you can take out one of the decorations that I have for the Part Breaker and put one of the Latent Power decorations in there. They do exist. I have like 1 or 2 of them, and you could increase the level of it. So with level 3 would actually increase the affinity by 30%, but the biggest difference is actually that we reduce our stamina depletion by 30% instead of 10% if we would increase it by 1 level. So it's totally optional. You can go ahead and do that if you want to. I don't really feel the need to do that because usually, you know, if I'm solo farming or for parts, then this set usually kills the enemy, like the monsters, in less than 5 minutes, and I try not to lose as much health to really meet these conditions. But I only really have this skill because I needed the pants for the 3-piece bonus, so that's just what I had to go with. So at this point of the video I usually show off the damage numbers. However, with the dual blades it's not really a concern because the numbers are going to be pretty low. I mean, after all, it's the dual blades, but since it hits quite quickly and very often, the damage does accumulate over time. However, that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the sharpness loss, or the decreased sharpness loss basically for our set. So I want you to keep an eye out on the top left corner, and currently we're at a full white sharpness. I'm running a normal armor set with no skills on it, so you can see you know, how much sharpness you would lose in a short amount of time if you didn't have the Teostra set bonus. So let me do the following. I'm just gonna keep hitting it with triangles and then the triangle circle to do the blade dance, and let's see how often we can do that. It's basically, we did it the combo once, and now we do it twice. We're already in blue sharpness, as you saw. So we We can't even do the combo twice without going from white to blue sharpness. Now let me change the set again, and let's take a look with the set bonus of Teostra. Okay, so this is where things get interesting. So I have full white sharpness. As you can see, I have the affinity booster and cooldown, so I haven't used it. I didn't like cheat or anything. I am still at 75% affinity, because keep in mind, I haven't augmented the weapons yet. So I'm at 75% affinity. Now every hit on this pole is considered basically a weak spot. So that's why I get to 75%. Now obviously you have to keep hitting the weak spots of the monster. So really it comes down to you knowing the weak spots of every monster really well in order to maximize the damage that you can do with this particular you know, armor set and skill set. So let me go ahead and show you the following. So let's start in demon mode, and let's hit the post a couple times, and again keep an eye out on the top left of the sharpness and the minimal amount of sharpness that we actually end up losing. So let's do this. Let's do the same thing that we did before, triple triangle into blade dance, and let's just keep going here. Let's do it one more time. Alright, as you saw, I did it 3 times, whereas before we barely could do it more than 1 time. And we're still all the way, or like by quite a bit, in white sharpness. And again, this is 75% affinity. Now you could place down the affinity booster right here, and for the next 60 seconds or so you wouldn't lose any sharpness, just because we are definitely in 100% as long as you hit weak spots. And then again, if you change some of the decorations and if you augment the weapon, you get even closer. So the amount of sharpness that you lose is really small, and that's basically where all our damage comes from. We don't have a lot of attack, and we don't have any attack boost or, you know, maximum mind or any other skills that increase our attack value. We basically increase our attack damage just by the pure fact that we have white sharpness instead of blue or even green. And so this is really what the set relies on. And in the gameplay that I'm going to show you in a second here, I'm going to fight a Rathian. It's a really quick fight. I'm using, you know, my knowledge of the weak spots, and I'm trying to hit them as often as I can in order to not go from white to blue sharpness. At the end, you will see the last couple hits, maybe 5 or 10 hits, I am actually in blue sharpness. But then again, keep in mind, I'm still at handicraft level 4 instead of 5. So if I would have been at 5, I probably would have stayed in white. And I haven't augmented the weapon, so I'm still missing 10% affinity. So let's say in a min-max set, I probably would have stayed in the white sharpness all the way through the fight. But you will see in a second what I'm talking about. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you like this set. Consider subscribing. We're a growing community, and I love to see that. And if nothing else, I'll catch you guys in the next video.